Apologize for the late start. Lewis, are you still on the line?
Yes,
Commissioner Ususi was not able to attend tonight, but he is available by telephone. He is on speakerphone and he can hear what's going on, and he will be responding during the meeting also. So at this time, I'll call the meeting to order, and if everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we will look at the adoption of the agenda. Have the commissioners had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes, I have.
Yes, I have.
And are there any modifications or additions to the agenda?
I have none.
I have none.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
I second.
And all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is presentation. Presentation on the 2020 census. Okay, Stephen, would you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Steve Hale. I'm a senior partnership specialist for the 2020 census. I live in Gardner, Kansas, in southwest Johnson County. If you want to go beyond that, I'm a native of St. Francis, Kansas. I grew up in the very northwest corner of the state, and over the course of my professional career, I've lived in McPherson and Cimarron and Ark City, and now I'm in Gardner. I've done a lot of work statewide. Now I have the privilege of representing the U.S. Census and advocating for a complete and accurate count. I want to start by saying a thanks. The Independent City Council was one of the first in the state to issue a proclamation of partnership, so you have a keen understanding, obviously, of the importance of the census, and we appreciate that that partnership proclamation. But now we're getting down to where the rubber meets the road. The census is just around the corner, and I'd like to give you a quick review of what's going to happen in the census and how independents can benefit from a complete and accurate count. Kelly, if you want to hit that. As a Census Bureau, we are required by law to count every inhabitant, every person living in this country. So that's what we're going to set out to do, and it's a big task. It's the biggest marshalization of public resources that this country ever does, and we do it once every 10 years. The first one was in 1790, and we've done it every 10 years since. Kelly? In the past, the census has always been a paper and pencil process. If you recall, you get a questionnaire in the mail, you fill it out, send it back in, and if you don't send it in a certain amount of time, a census taker will come and knock on your door. It's changing a little bit in this era. 95% of the households in this country will receive an invitation to complete the census at first. This invitation is to drive people online so that they fill it out online. That's good and bad. It's good in its efficiencies and cost savings, but not everybody has a computer. Not everybody's comfortable with a computer. So soon in March, those mailings will go out, and we want people to be ready, but the big key is to drive people online to do it. By doing it online, that includes your home computer, your tablet, even your smartphone. It can handle 13 languages. It can also be done by phone. You can call and speak to a real person to get it done. And then there's the old-fashioned way, the mail. If you do not respond to the online for the first 2 or 3 mailings that you get, you will receive the census form, the written census form, and can respond that way. And then the census takers will come knocking on your door. Kelly? This is a real quick timeline. The key dates here are March 12th. That's when the self-response, that's when the mailers go out. Census Day is where you live out as of April 1st is where you're to be counted, and then the non-response follow-up when the census taking starts, or the people will go around knocking on doors. That's follows shortly in May. It might happen a little bit quicker here at Independence because you have a community college. The students at that campus are to be counted here in Montgomery County. College students are counted where they go to school, and in order to make sure that they're counted before they go home, that census follow-up will start a little bit quicker. Kelly? These are the 10 questions on the census. I won't belabor this. There's nothing new, hardly. There's name, phone, age, sex, race, Hispanic origin, place of residence, etc. 3 or 4 months ago, there was an 11th question about citizenship. That question is no longer on the form. And it's somewhat of an issue, remains somewhat of an issue, but it's not part of the questionnaire. That said, census information is kept confidential for 72 years. We're really trying to push home that fact in this era of social media and online communications. We've had an election that's been supposedly tampered with, and we want to make sure that everybody knows that their information is kept confidential by the Census Bureau. It's not shared with any other agency, not with the IRS, not with Homeland Security, not with any law enforcement agency. The information, your personal data, is kept confidential for 72 years. Why 72 years, you might ask? The first census was in 1790, and about then that's what the life expectancy was. When Thomas Jefferson oversaw the first census, they decided they wanted to keep it confidential for a normal lifespan. It was about 72 years. So in the big picture, the census determines apportionment in the U.S. House of Representatives. There's 435 seats in the House of Representatives. That number stays static. And so every time there's a census, then the numbers could adjust from the various states. This is what happened in 2010. And you can see that the states there in blue all gained representation in Congress due to the census numbers. And the states that you see there in orange all lost. There are all kinds of projections about what's going to happen this time around. Kansas is not necessarily expected to gain or lose, but who knows? Projections show that states like Texas and those states that you see there in blue are expected to likely gain again. Texas, even though it has a designated hard-to-count community, could gain as many as 3 more seats in the House of Representatives if numbers go as expected. In Kansas, what you see here on the left is our congressional districts. The center is State Senate, and the right is House of Representatives. We may not lose representation in Congress, but how the census count comes in could determine where those boundaries are. If there is a shift from western Kansas to east in population, that big first district for Roger Marshall's could actually get bigger. I want to remind you that it is not the Census Bureau that draws these lines. The Census Bureau provides the numbers, and then it's the politicians who draw those lines. I can tell you that there's a big concern in southwest Kansas that they were undercounted in 2010. The city of Garden City appealed their numbers twice to no avail. And they're working real hard right now with us to make sure that they get a complete and accurate count because they believe that they were underrepresented and they're losing some funds. So this is really what the big picture is all about. And this is why, Mayor, you've called me and we've talked about this because there's a lot of funding at stake here. Kansas receives approximately $6 billion for the top 55 programs that are based on decennial count numbers. Those programs include the top 5 are Medicaid, student loans, SNAP, which is food stamps, Medicare Part B, highway planning and construction. But Kelly, if you'll go to the next slide, this shows you what it really comes down to. We're talking about Pell Grant programs, low to moderate income housing loans, special ed grants, Head Start, school breakfast programs, business and industry loans, adoption assistance, career and tech education grants. We're talking about quality of life. So these numbers are so important that we need to have everybody counted. This next slide is not, and these numbers last for 10 years. These numbers last for 10 years. This next slide is not a Census Bureau slide. This is from the League of Kansas Municipalities. You go to their website, it's kansascounts.org, and this is a number that tends to resonate with city leaders. If you click on the state, you can click on your city, And it will show you that for every household that's not counted, the league estimates that your community will lose almost $48,000 for over a 10-year span. It's about $2,000 a person. Every person who's not counted is going to cost you about $2,000 a year in federal funding. That's for the city of Independence. That number is kind of similar for any city in the state of Kansas. It fluctuates from about $46,000 to about $56,000. That's a financial impact that you have, Kelly. We're dealing with, this time around, in this census, we have a mobile population, declining response rates, increasingly diverse population, and we've got distrust in government. So here I am from the government to help you and to get a complete count, and that's why I'm turning to you for assistance. We identified the hard-to-count communities and populations. Children under age 5 and persons over age 65 tend to be historically the two hardest groups to count. Kids, for some reason, that just don't often get counted, and persons over age 65 often have unique living situations, assisted living, and sometimes they're the ones who are the most stubborn and don't want to participate. And this time when we're trying to drive them to computers, we have some additional challenges. Kelly? So group quarters is another aspect of this that does affect Independence when it comes to the community college, even though they're outside your city limits. Residence halls, group homes, nursing homes, residential treatment centers, the homeless population are all counted by a group quarters operation that's run separately from the household count. And so that is gearing up, and that will happen later on, right around April 1st. But the Census Bureau operations team is reaching out to these facilities now to prepare to make sure their residents are counted. Callie? Skip this slide. We have a map that shows where those numbers, the hard-to-count areas are. The darker the color, the harder the count it's expected to be. So as I circled Kansas here, you can see that the southwest corner of the state is expected to be a hard-to-count community based on previous censuses and current demographics. If you come to Montgomery County, we see here that's one tract in Montgomery County that includes Independence. It's not size proportionate, I'm sorry about that, but you have in this area what is considered a low response score of 23.7, which is not very good. What that means is that the Census Bureau estimates that 23.7% of your population will not self-respond to the census, and that census takers are going to have to go to 23% of the households in that particular area to get the final numbers. We would like to see that be improved. Anything above 25 is considered not a good score. Anything above 30 is high risk, and anything below 20 is kind of good. This is another part of Independence that shows that score's gone down a little bit. So you've got some challenges ahead based on predictions. So what you and I talked about, Mayor, on the phone the other day is about something that we talked about initially when I met with Kelly. About forming a committee of trusted voices who will help you get the word out. Rather than it being the Census Bureau and the government coming in here to tell how important it is that everybody's counted and what it means, you rely on trusted voices with your own committee who come together and marshal forces and help get the word out, be it elected officials, be it Chamber of Commerce people. I met today with Lisa Wilson and Tabitha Snodgrass with Downtown. And also I met with Rusty and John at the school district. They're all understanding how important it is and have agreed to be part of this process. Bring the library in, any kind of ministerial alliance, faith-based leaders who can work together to help make sure that your constituents know how important the census is. We will also help you set up mobile questionnaire assistance sites during the census. So if there's certain tracts that you know in real time are not responding, that you can maybe set up some sites where computers can be made available, and we from the Census Bureau can help you man those and make sure that the word gets out. Kelly? Jobs is a real important aspect of this. There's 4,500 people are going to be hired as census takers. These jobs pay about $15 an hour, part-time jobs. We'd like to have people from Independence be the ones that have these jobs so that they're counting their neighbors and they're trusted as they go around. Contact information and I think I might have gone over, but I tried to talk really fast. I've been in your spot before. I've been on the city council in Gardner, and I've been through work sessions that go too long. And it's like, we don't need any presentations. Let's get to the agenda. Any questions?
Question, Dean?
No, I don't have any questions, but I do see the very significant importance of an accurate census count for not only the city of Independence, but for Montgomery County and Kansas. It's worthy of the effort.
I can tell you that Tricia Purden, we've met with her, and she's done some work on our behalf. She well understands the importance of this as well. We talked about getting some numbers, and from an economic development perspective, there's some tiers that corporations look at before they'll entertain the idea of opening a business or a restaurant or moving operations into a county, and population counts is one of those. And she's very well aware that there's of the importance to make sure everybody's counted.
Louis, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. I've got one question. When we were visiting on a conference call and then looking at your bubble diagram that showed the different groups, you'd mentioned housing like the dorms, residential living, but I didn't see in your bubble diagram a special group that was identified to reach out there
There it is.
to kind of make contact and focus. There are quite a few facilities. You look at the dorms, assisted living, some apartment complexes. Would it be advantageous to have a group that would target those in Independence and, including the dorms? Or is that something you had mentioned, I think a special mailing that was going to go out to those?
The way those are group quarters, and group quarters are counted differently than the households. So, in collaboration with your city, with the post office, even FedEx, UPS, and others, we have identified all the mailing addresses and facilities where people live, including group quarters. So they've identified them. And what they'll start doing now, you do not have to reach out to the Census Bureau about those facilities. They should be contacted, whether it's a college with a dorm or whether it's a manager of a skilled nursing facility or someone, if you have long-term residents in your jail, those people will be counted by several ways in collaboration collectively with the Census Bureau and the managers. Quite likely it'll be done with administrative records. College dorm most likely will give the Census Bureau the administrative records of the residents of that dorm rather than distributing census questionnaires throughout. The same for assisted living facilities. Maybe not everyone in those facilities is capable of filling out a census form, so the administration of that building will turn in a count of who they are and whatever information they can about them, age, sex, that sort of thing, and they will be counted. And they have the same privacy rights, but they will not be filling out a questionnaire.
Okay. Well, when you look at the loss of funding for not getting counted, that's a significant number of people in those facilities, and just want to make sure, for Independence, that they're being included in the count some way.
I think that the way that process would work is if you're on top of it and your community, and if you do form a committee, and there's a red flag, like nobody's approached me. I'm managing a group facility, and I have not heard from the Census Bureau, and here we are at the end of March. What's going on? That's then a red flag, and we would move in.
Okay, so we should have somebody that, in Independence, that reaches out to the administrator to call to make sure they've been contacted?
It'll be someone from the Census Bureau, from the group operations team.
Okay.
And they will be contacted either by in person, by phone, or by mail.
Okay, fine. I think that's the only question I had. I really appreciate you coming and explaining the importance of the census to us, and it is something that's easily to be considered. The Big Brother is looking over our shoulder for some reason that we shy back.
It's
and hesitate.
Of all the message points that we talk about to encourage people to take part in the census, it is our legal responsibility to do it. But the number one driving message that encourages people to do it, it's your civic responsibility. You as a resident of this country, if you live in this country, you need to take part in the census. It's part of our government process, and it has been since before 1800. It's your civic responsibility to be part of this process. Don't forget that.
Well, no other question. We appreciate you for coming this evening. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item relating to this is appoint a complete count committee. Did you have the members that were recommended for that distributed to the other commissioners?
I did copy them on that.
Any questions, additions?
I took a look at the list. It looked like it was comprehensive.
Louis?
I took a look at the list. It did look like a good start of people already on to help with the census.
Okay. Then with that, I'll entertain a motion concerning the complete count committee.
Motion?
I move that we appoint a complete count committee for the 2020 census.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Got a
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. And Kelly, you'll contact to make sure everyone is willing to serve and
Yes.
report back to us. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Appointments. At this time, we have two positions on the Planning Board and Zoning Appeals, one resignation and one additional term that's expiring. At this time, I would like to appoint Kendall Neal to the unexpired term that is being vacated with the resignation of Philip Umlauf. And at this time, I also would like to thank Philip for his dedication and his service on the committee. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. And I would like to open up the application period again for the open term. And any interested parties, if you would fill out an application and submit your interest. Also, we have some opening for the tree board. We have 3 positions. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to approve Leslie Fox for a 3rd term, Michelle Anderson for a 3rd term, and Bob Brewster for a 1st term. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next, introductions and swearing in. Chief Harrison?
Pleased to present a couple of new hires tonight, and it was pointed out to me earlier that I've got some more that I need to, that kind of, as time goes by, you kind of miss a couple, so I'll be presenting a couple more to you pretty soon. But one of them couldn't be here tonight. She's on her way down to God's country, one of the most beautiful parts of the USA, Cassville, Missouri, located near beautiful Roaring River. So she won't be here tonight, but I do have 2 outstanding new folks to introduce to you. So Paula, if you'll come forward. This is Paula Hayes. She's Peruvian from Peru, Kansas, and she's been a resident of Independence since 2003. She lives here with her husband Jerry and their 2 little girls, ages 9 and 4. Since relocating here, she's been involved in several local organizations as an active member of Project Q&A and Women for Kansas. So we're really excited to have Paula working with us now. And the next introduction, and Mr. Schwenker, if you're about ready. This is Justin Ward. He grew up in Caney, graduated from Caney, and was a member of the 4-H or the FFA chapter down there. He's a 12-year member of the 4-H club, earning the highest 4-H award in the state of Kansas, the Key Award. And he went to Hutchinson Community College and graduated in 2018. He worked on his family's cattle ranch in rural Independence after graduating from college with his family. And he's married to Danielle Ward, and they reside here in Independence. He started with us, and then he went and attended KLETC in Hutchinson, Kansas, graduating December 20th. So we're very excited to have him out on the road, and we can't tease him and call him dead weight anymore because he is definitely getting it put to him already. So he's doing a great job. So welcome aboard.
Justin, will you raise your right hand? I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and the Constitution of the State of Kansas,
and faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
and faithfully discharge the duties of a police officer
for the City of Independence, Kansas.
for the City of Independence, Kansas.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Welcome. We're excited to see you join the Force of Independence workers.
Welcome to you both.
Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. We had no modifications, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I move.
I make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda.
I second it.
Motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Public hearings. See, we have a public hearing to consider condemnation of 301 Cement Street as dangerous and unsafe. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Dave?
Mayor, excuse me, Mayor, this is a residence that was on the unsound list by Montgomery County last year. We have been in contact with the owner of the property who resides in Florida, and she has signed a release to the city to have this property removed. At this time, we would ask that the house be considered dangerous and unsafe and condemned.
Okay. Property owner's not here.
She's aware, I doubt it, she lives in Florida, but
Okay. Any public interest? Any neighbors want to address the commission? So with that, I'll close the public hearing and open for commission discussion. Dean, do you have any discussion?
I do not.
Lewis, do you have any questions about the condemnation?
No, I don't, Leonard. I've looked at the house here quite a while back. No, I don't.
Okay. So with that, she sent a letter in writing
yes,
authorizing.
she sent a release signed by her authorizing the removal of the house.
So tonight then, what we'll do is I'll entertain a motion concerning the condemnation and we'll complete the process. So do I have a motion?
I move that
Yes.
301 Cement Street be condemned as dangerous and unsafe.
Do I have a second?
Second? Second?
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Okay. Next is a public hearing to consider adopting the Southeast, Southwest, and Central Neighborhood Revitalization Plans and establishing the Southeast, Southwest, and Central Neighborhood Revitalization areas. So at this time, I will open the hearing. And Kelly,
Mayor and Commissioners, this first map shows all of the existing neighborhood revitalization areas, including the three new ones that are proposed. These are ones that had expired. We modified the boundaries, excluding those that are in the 100-year floodplain and adding those that had unsafe or other houses that were in conditions recognized by the county that needed to be included that would meet the definition of blight, which is required by the statute. This is the southeast portion, and on the left is that condition report underlaid from the county. You'll see it says poor, unsound. That is those conditions by the county appraiser's office, which shows that as a blighted neighborhood. On the right, it's the same area, and it shows the zoning classifications, which is also required as part of the plan. Southwest, same type of mapping. You can see there's quite a few structures that meet those unsound or poor conditions. And on the right is the zoning for that area. This is the central. It's actually in three pieces. This is the northern piece of that with the zoning on the right. And this is the center piece of it, also with the zoning on the right. And this is that little area where we just did a repaving over there by Ben Mosley Drive and North 24th. And it had some opportunities, so we wanted to include that in the revitalization district as well. Oops, went too far. So if this is approved, then I will take it to each of the taxing entities to ask them to sign the interlocal agreement. Once that is done, then we'll submit it to the Attorney General for his review and approval. And once he signs that, then that will go into effect. And what this will do is it's based on the appraised value over the last 3 years on an average. And if you make improvements, then the first 5 years you get 100% rebated on the increased taxes after you pay your taxes. The next 5 years is 50%. You do have to be current on all of your taxes for all the properties you own in Montgomery County to be eligible for the program.
okay.
And I did run the language through and visited with Charlotte and Kathy in the county clerk's office, and they were okay with it before I proceeded with this. So I do not anticipate any issues with the county or the other entities.
Okay. Okay, as a public hearing, I open for citizens' comments concerning the neighborhood revitalization plans as proposed. We have no one that wants to address the commission during the public hearing. Then I will close the public hearing and open for commission discussion. Dean?
These areas and this language for these revitalization plans are consistent with the ones that we have already in place, correct?
Consistent in what way?
Virtually similar language.
To the other plans, the language. It is similar to the language for the North Penn. There was one modification done on this one about if it used to be within 60 days of applying for a building permit, but you could make modifications to your structure that did not require a building permit that could increase the value over $5,000. And so we modified the language. I visited with the county clerk's office so that they could apply within 60 days of the work starting or getting a building permit. So that is different from the North Penn one. The North Penn one is when they added, I think, some of the language on the average 3 years, some of the other things. Other than that, they're very similar, but there were some small modifications.
Thank you.
Louis, do you have any questions?
No. Yes, I do have one. The 1 to 5 year and the 6 to 10 year. Those percentages have not changed, right?
Yeah, the percentages are the same as they are in the other
Okay.
groups. And if it's a historic structure, it's 100% for 10 years.
Yes. Okay. All right. I think that's the only question I had.
So to activate a property owner to take advantage of the neighborhood revitalization plan for their property, it would be initiated through a building permit application only?
No, that was what's modified. If they're within 60 days of when they started the improvements, they can apply even if the work didn't require a building permit. Because if you put a new roof on your house, you paint your house, some things like that, don't require a building permit, but depending on the structure, it could be a significant improvement. So we didn't want those people to miss out on this opportunity.
And where would, to activate the plan, would they have to notify code enforcement? Where do they go to start that if it doesn't need a building permit?
We have an application, and it's a $25 fee that's paid to the county, and then we take it over to the county on their behalf, and that starts the process. And once this is all adopted, I plan on doing some education with some different groups. I'm going to meet with the Realtors Association, maybe talk at a First Friday, and we have a beautification committee, and we talked about visiting with that group on have some target areas that we would like to look at improving that would encompass some of these as well, and let them know about that. We're also going to include some information in the April 1st newsletter about it and try to get that information out and hopefully generate some interest. We also talked about doing some pamphlets and having them at different areas. Maybe when you go get supplies at Woods or something, then, if you're doing a big improvement project, make sure these people know about it and try to market it a little bit better so that people will take advantage of it, because we want them to take advantage of it.
Definitely. So who's the contact person at City Hall?
It's actually the finance director and city clerk are the ones that take care of the application.
Okay, good.
Just one more comment, and that is, as you're educating ongoing, I think it was mentioned that we might even attach a notice of this to the building permit application itself, so that people would be aware of it as they are picking up a building permit. That makes sense.
If you did a significant spruce up that wouldn't require permits, it would be something that you could take benefit of too. So, I think it's an excellent plan to include and expand the areas like you've done. Appreciate all your work
Thank
for
you.
that.
It's a lot of work. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm very excited about getting this done.
Yeah. And like you said, this is just the first step that going to the groups to get the word out is really going to be beneficial. So thank you for your work. If there's no other questions, then I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I move to adopt an ordinance adopting the Southeast, Southwest, and Central revitalization plans and establishing the Southeast, Southwest, and Central revitalization areas as presented, and authorize the mayor to sign the Neighborhood Revitalization Plan interlocal agreement.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Next item, items for commission action. Consider setting the date of March 26, 2020 for a public hearing to consider condemnation of 312 South 15th Street as dangerous and unsafe.
Mayor,
David?
this structure was involved in a recent structure fire involving a bedroom, downstairs bedroom and bathroom that fully engulfed that and did considerable damage to the first floor and second floor. The insurance company has already totaled this, and the homeowner's intent is to demo this property. We have already been in contact with the insurance. David Swanker has, and we are in receipt, or the money is on the way, the deposit to hold to ensure that this demolition occurs. But I am very confident the homeowner will proceed as he works with insurance to settle this claim. He is aware of the process and understands the process that we go through to do the condemnations. And I hope by the March 26th meeting, we're able to tell you that he's been able to successfully remove this structure on his own and will be able to return his money. But at this time, we'd ask for you to set a date of March 26th, 2020 for a public hearing to consider this structure as dangerous and unsafe.
Okay. Questions from the commissioner for Dave?
I have none.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
Well, then, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to set the date of March 26, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. for a public hearing to consider condemnation of the fire damaged structure at 312 South 15th Street.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item, consider a downtown bike rack policy.
Mayor, we were approached over a year ago. It was actually about December of last year about bike racks in the downtown area and what our process would be. At that time, City Manager Craig, we set up a committee that reviewed this process. And as with everything we're trying to do in our downtown and the streetscape and the signage, we wanted to have something consistent and not just the old-fashioned bike racks stuck up downtown. So we empowered this committee, and this committee came back with a design with some options, and the process literally kind of held up for a little bit, but we're picking it back up. And I'm here tonight, Commissioner, to just seek a little direction so that we can finish this process and bring back a ordinance and a policy that you guys would be willing to accept. They narrowed it down to 3 designs. We believe we can get local people possibly to make these, whereas if you would go out online and purchase them, one similar to the Denver design online would be about $500. Possibly that could be done cheaper here through the Fab Lab or a local contractor. So that's a possibility. Also, some direction as far as staff discussed this. Craig's idea was an application and people would apply. We would review the ADA aspects of it and make sure everything was in line, bring it to the commission for approval. Staff says there's also maybe the option we bring to you a plan for them in certain areas of the downtown, pre-planned out. So, or does the commission prefer to deal with it a one-on-one basis? Because you do have to consider the owners and what they want in front of their buildings and that. So that's some direction there. And it's an unfunded mandate. So our ideas back there as we started this process is small fees for registration of bike, empowering fees for impounded bikes to get bikes out, something to maybe help fund this a little bit, or how, some of these requests potentially would be donated by the people requesting them. But just some of those questions that I wanted to come and ask you for some direction so we could bring you a policy or ordinance that we could then pass. So with that, I'll let you guys ask a few questions.
Louis, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I heard mention of a cost, and did I hear correctly, $500?
If we went, Commissioner, if we went out just online or just to purchase them, yes. When I look, around $450 to $500, but we think we can possibly do it cheaper locally with people around here, and maybe even some in-kind work at the Fab Lab or something.
Right. Okay. And then as far as going through the process and making this, there was a Mark Lehman on some information I got that might be a person that would be able to design and make these. Is that correct?
I think there's some ideas. I don't want to throw names out, but in staff meeting, we talked about a couple local people that we felt would be able to do this fairly reasonable and locally.
Okay.
I think
And
it's
then
something we'd bring back to you guys after we
Okay,
got.
and then as far as maintenance, keeping the bike racks presentable, you're looking at with the police when they impound bicycles, there's a $25 fee. So you're looking at maybe using that money to help do the maintenance on these.
Yes, I think our idea was, it's an unfunded mandate to put these down unless they donate the rack. But if we set up a fee for registration of bikes, or if there was an impound of a bike and somebody wanted to get it, and there would be certain circumstances where there wouldn't be that fee, depending on what happened to the bike. But those funds could then be placed in an account to help maintain, replace, or install new requested bike racks in the downtown area or on public property.
Okay, if I understood right, then it's the chief of police, and then people that he would people working under him would actually enforce this, or people that he would appoint to oversee.
Probably. We would like to discuss that a little bit more. I mean, Jerry's aware of it, but it really impacts him more as we studied this and we looked at larger cities when they did this and what they found. All of a sudden now you have bikes that are chained up and left. So if you don't have a policy or a mechanism in place for whoever's going to enforce that to remove the bike and take care of it, I mean, you have to deal with those type of problems. And so that's how we came up with the draft ordinance that I put there. It needs to be refined. Staff hasn't really seen it for about 6 months. We're just trying to get this out in front of you guys because we have citizens that are wanting bike racks downtown, and we'd like to get this process back in front of you within the next 30 days.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Dean?
Well, my preference is that it be in some way considered as part of the the landscaping of the downtown. An initial placement would be on properties within the downtown. It's possible, and so it's running it past some some community participants, some citizens, some business owners in that area for feedback would be preferable. And then just some of these more classic designs, simpler designs would seem to be more, to match the various motifs of the different businesses in the downtown and also easier to maintain. So have we run those designs, those rack designs past a group of citizens to see what their feedback might be, other than the bike rack committee that you talked about?
No, but I mean, as you spoke, my mind went to the downtown historical committee and making sure Ken Brown and his committee has some input into this. So I think that would be, and he may have been a part of the committee. Tricia, they're shaking their head. Has that been a consideration of the historical downtown and making it?
Ken was on that committee.
Ken was on the committee, but we would definitely run it back past him.
Other than that, we're talking about how many downtown locations were proposed by the bike rack committee?
I'm not sure that I heard that. I know I have a request for bike racks at Annie Mae's. That is what initiated this and started this whole process. Staff has some other ideas about certain locations that may want them. So the library, I believe, potentially is another place that we would want to put them.
So even at an extreme cost of $500 per rack and maybe 10 locations throughout the entire community, you're talking about a total budget of $500 plus or $5,000 plus installation, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
And this was just a central business district or the downtown area.
My feelings, Leonard, it would apply to any city property, so if
Okay,
I think we need to consider our parks and other
yeah.
places.
I can see the, I can
Just
see
to
the
have a
park.
consistent bike racks throughout the community.
In the packet, there was a lot of information going much farther beyond, and that's where it seemed to get a little
Yeah.
cumbersome, and from bike rack for one bike or two bikes to a whole process and a bike program, and that's where the confusion and it really starts going downhill.
Yeah.
There's not enough information about
Right.
who's going to do it, but
Yeah.
I think looking at designated areas, so it's predetermined. None of those have bicycles attached to them, and I think it's something that you, particularly looking at traffic flow, the only thing I know that ADA would have on a bike rack is that it can't obstruct
Pathway. Yeah.
accessible route.
Yes.
Because there's nothing ADA about a
Right.
bicycle
Exactly.
rack or a bicycle.
Yeah.
But location is going to be really important, and I think if it develops, I would want to see recommendations that you study the area required for the bikes and how it would integrate. And I think in the packet it mentioned Annie Mae's, the Pocket Park, or the parking area by Community National Bank, and then the Pocket Park at Myrtle and 6th. Large areas, it would be very easy to accommodate those, but looking elsewhere, I think some recommendation that not anyone, we don't want a lot of them, but tastefully
Right.
located,
Yep.
so
Okay.
somewhere in range. Again, a small cost. The library already has 2 bike racks at their building.
Yep.
So, that's already handled. We're not going to be dealing there. But,
Right.
I've read through the policy that you had roughed out, and a lot of work,
Yeah.
and trying to cover a lot of bases there. And what sounds simple does become complex.
And that's what I found as you research what these other cities, it just
Yeah.
isn't as simple as putting a bike rack
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, and identifying, because your bike policy, you're trying to identify and take it beyond what the city ordinance does to allowing a bike path also. So I think it's a start. We did have a group approach the commission, 3 years ago that requested, was it the young professionals?
Bike club?
No.
Oh, the young
It was
professionals.
one of the,
Our Turn or YPI?
Yeah. It's one of the-
I think it was YPI, because they were interested in putting some bike racks. Hannah from Equity Bank came and did the presentation.
Okay.
I think, this could be an opportunity to reach out
Okay.
to them also. So what you're asking us to do is just take it to the next step, refine a
We'll go back and
proposal,
refine it.
look at locations so that you come back, refine your costs,
Yes.
and identify maintenance, and
Yes.
then
We just want to make sure you guys, if you had any specific directions you wanted to give us, you would give that. We'll go back and refine this. My understanding is you would like us to designate some places and not just go off of by request.
right.
We'll go back and do that. Are you okay with us setting up a funding mechanism, a small one? It probably won't generate a lot of money, but
Well, at this time, I think we're looking at options, and I'd like, Dean mentioned maybe contacting the realtor, not the realtors, the store owners, and bring them aware of the design and
Okay.
potential locations too. Kind of look at the traffic flow where
Okay.
it'd be most beneficial.
Yeah, we'll get Jerry involved in that part, and we'll try to get this back to you because they want to move on it
Right.
the end of February meeting, if that's okay.
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 Mr. Mayor, could I say something?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, the city attorney just wanted to remind you that we have a city ordinance that prohibits bicycles on sidewalks. So you really need to address the ordinance.
Writing or,
Apparently, according to him, prohibiting bicycles on sidewalks in downtown district.
okay.
This is the statute.
What?
Unless it's a statute.
Well, it surely isn't a statute. It surely isn't a statute. No, bicycles that don't move are okay.
Well, yeah, I think that's really good to look at that as designating areas. Maybe you have to take out a parking
We'll
space.
definitely get Jerry involved in that
Yeah.
aspect of
I,
it.
I understand what Tim's saying, but I think that ordinance is directed at operating bikes, skateboards, roller skates,
Just
roller
need
blades.
to look at it is all I'm saying.
Sure.
Yeah, Jerry's going to be heavily involved in this aspect of it because it truly puts the burden on his department when we start doing these type of things. So we will definitely look at all that and bring you back a recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Next item, consider participation in the community ranking system, the CRS, so that residents will qualify for discounted flood insurance premiums. David?
Mayor, part of the building department, we are the floodplain management for the city, and this actually goes back to 2007 when we had the big flood and all of the flood lots that then came out of that and that we are required to manage by the agreements that we did with FEMA and removing all of those structures and how we maintain all those properties. Last year, as you remember, we approved a new ordinance that was required by the federal government and FEMA, and we raised our, you have to be 2 foot out of the floodplain versus 1 foot. This past summer, the state of Kansas with FEMA came in and did an audit of Independence. That audit was to check to make sure that the city of Independence was managing its floodplain area. We've had one structure that was not in compliance, which kept us out of this program. And with your assistance, the city was able to resolve that. The homeowner is very pleased, and it made us eligible for the CRS program. The CRS program is a discount to those people that are required to have flood insurance because they have a mortgage on their house. And the number I was told is we have about 65 people in town that are required to have a mortgage insurance because of a mortgage on their house. That insurance is very expensive. And in staff meeting, we were talking about it, and I heard ranges of $1,200 to $2,500 a month, depending on what you're insuring, or a year for flood insurance. This program will allow us, because of the work of the floodplain, and we've kept things from being in the floodplain, structures being built or inhibiting the flow of water, we are immediately going to be able to offer our citizens a 10% discount once we join this program. And then with work from staff, we believe we can get it up to a 15% discount on their flood insurance program. It is very labor-intensive work. It's different things that they allow you to do. Some of the stuff we already have in place as we manage our floodplain activities and what goes on, space activities. And it's by these activities that you get points and do different things. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going through all the different things that we will have to do to manage this. I included that in your guys' packet, but this is something we can do. It's something staff can handle, and I believe we can offer our citizens a 15% and maybe even higher with the work staff can do with this program for our citizens. So the first step of this is the mayor signs this letter of intent for us to join the program. Once you do that, I will send that to Steve Samuelson at the State of Kansas Floodplain Office tomorrow. He will schedule a meeting with the city. He will come down. And then Melissa Mitchell will follow soon after. She's a CRS program specialist. They come down, get us started, show us all the work that we need to do, get the program initiated and going. And then there will be a presentation they come and do to the City Commission for joining the program. So it would be my recommendation that we join this program to offer our citizens, I know a 10% right off the way, but we're hoping at least a 15% discount on their flood insurance.
And basically, the cost to the city is just some record keeping and documentation.
It's going to be, it's a lot of GIS work. We have to do layers. We have to add a web page to our web page. I have to get with Lisa Wilson because we have to put pamphlets out, and I know she does pamphlets all over. I have to have meetings with realtors.
Right.
I mean, it's just a lot of things that we have to do, similar to like putting her neighborhood revitalization on every building permit. Every building permit has to be floodplain checked. We have to maintain a record of that. Anything happening building-wise, we have to document it, record those against floodplain stuff. I mean, it's just a lot of work that they then come and audit to make sure that we're doing it to stay in the program.
Questions, Dean?
What I heard you say, David, that although this is a lot of work, the staff that we currently have has the ability to absorb this in their current workload.
We will make sure this gets done, sir. Yes, we will absorb it and make sure it gets done. I think once we get it in place and running and going, and the state of Kansas is being very helpful with me. They've already supplied me multiple GIS maps that I have to have, and it's just getting it in place and rolling.
Yes, the workload at startup, no doubt, will be significantly
Yes.
more than the workload at maintenance. Right?
Yes.
But you think you can handle both?
We will make sure it gets taken care of.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lewis, do you have any questions?
No, this is a good deal. It will allow the citizens to get a discount and identifies the number of properties and certain things that the city has to comply with to the possibility of increasing that 10% discount upwards. So, and for those people that purchase flood insurance, that would be a huge benefit for them as far as cost saving of acquiring the insurance on their property. It's a good deal.
And a lot of it for the one location that David mentioned, it wouldn't have been hard to document it at the time of construction.
Yeah.
A letter, a survey, and the paperwork follow through. It's the after the fact going back is when it becomes time consuming. So, I know David is, in the last 2 or 3 months, he and Kelly have worked hard on improving written documentation of the different steps going through the construction process. So, their preparation for this has really already began. When somebody comes in and you can identify the property in a questionable floodplain or whatever and get the information followed through, it's going to be a benefit and really an asset for our citizens and a compliment for the city to have that much preparedness ready to go to help anyone coming in, buying a house or setting up financing to know exactly what needs to be done. So, if there's no other questions concerning the subject, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the mayor sign a letter of intent to participate in the CRS program.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is to consider the recommendation of the Planning Commission to grant a conditional use permit for an indoor firing range in the C3 Central Business District at 212 North Pennsylvania Avenue with conditions.
Mayor and Commissioners, the City Commission, or Planning Commission had a public hearing on this. And this first slide shows the area and the 200-foot notification area of the property owners that were notified. Here are the conditions that they approved on a 5-3 vote. The only condition that they modified had to do with item number 4, which is highlighted on adding some additional language on the noise level being measured prior to and after the indoor firing range was opened. So the other ones, they were in your packet. I did quite a bit of research on this and pulled this from some different communities that were looking at this and kind of merged what worked and tried to make sure that we address those that, had concerns. I did get some articles that I did forward to you and were in the packet that one of the planning commissioners wanted to make sure that you had, and she was concerned about making the gun range lead-free. I did have the police chief write a memo about that, and he is here if you have any questions about that. And basically, if you have any other questions, let me know. She did send a follow-up email, Lisa did, and I forwarded that to you. And I don't know if you want to add any additional conditions related to that or not, but just wanted to note that she did send that as well. And I believe the applicant is here, Mr. Lehman, and he was representing the gun club at the hearing.
Okay. Would you like to address the commission?
Good evening. My name is Mark Lehman. I'm the president of the Independence Gun Club. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have for me.
Mark, how long has the Independence Gun Club been in existence?
That's a really good question. We can't pinpoint the exact year, but it's the early 50s.
And they did have an indoor range.
At one time, we had an indoor range, and I think I can't tell you exactly what year it went out, but when Cessna came in, we lost that range. It was out there at the airport. They had league shooting. It was used regularly.
Yeah, when the range in the 70s, there was a youth gun club also that taught firearm safety, and the NRA 50-foot small bore qualifications, and then exposure to some of the other matches, 30 caliber, 45.
Right, and that's one of the reasons that we lost. When we lost the indoor range, we lost some of the outdoor competitions because the handguns and the M1 Grands and so forth were all stored in that indoor range. Mm-hmm. So that actually it put a big dent in our club, losing those competitions.
The condition, what was it on number 4, concerning the noise level? Yeah, there shall be no increase in the number of decibels outside the building as compared to a measurement prior to operation attributable to the indoor firing range. The city does have a noise ordinance already, and this requirement, I mean, you've got to have a base set, and it's based upon traffic in the street, and the ordinance doesn't mean that you can't have noise. It says you can't elevate the increased noise above that traffic level. So this is misleading. And it's misleading requirement because there is a chance, depending on the design, you might hear a puff, but you're not going to hear an uncomfortable noise, and it'll probably never increase at a full decibel. If it affects it at all, that'll be unusual. Bass Pro has an indoor firing range, and it's in the building right next to the shopping. You can't hear it unless you're in front of the glass. They've got storefront, the office area, then they've got another enclosure, and you might hear a puff. But they also fire rifles too. So, I don't see the concern about the sound at all.
All depends on the design of the range.
Mm-hmm. And, you've got a lot of OSHA, EPA requirements to meet filtration systems. I'm not concerned with the safety of it. There's been concerns about a weapon loaded and unloaded coming in. Kansas is an open carry state. I'm more concerned in Walmart or some other store seeing somebody open carry than I would with somebody carrying a firearm into this facility. I don't have concerns. I think some of it might be a little cumbersome, particularly the one dealing with the noise. I think it's a potential to cause conflict because of lack of understanding of what the noise ordinance is and then the measurement of sound.
We're going to meet or exceed the requirements made by the city on noise. And I'm with you on the ranges. I've been to several ranges, and depending on the design or what type of firearm is shot in there, you can make it where you barely hear the noise if it's handled correctly.
I think the largest handgun caliber is, 45? That was in some of the information I saw.
There's larger calibers,
Yeah.
but typically not used often.
Lewis, Dean, do you have any?
Yeah, Mark, I know there's a lot of stipulations that are involved in setting up this gun range. Have you checked with other locations in the state that have been successful with indoor firing ranges, in particular in regards to the air filtration system, and how are they maintaining that?
I've spoke with the owner of Lee's Cooling and Heating. He's here tonight. He can speak intelligently about that, more so than I can. Also spoken with several range designers that handle that turnkey. If there's any filtration concerns, I'm sure he would be glad to discuss that with you, if you'd allow him to speak.
Brian, would you like to explain anything?
Really the thing here is the template's in place on how this works. There's guidelines from the NRA and the EPA as far as filtration. It all comes down to dealing with the lead in the air. So you can do a positive pressure that moves the air away from the firing, the people where they're firing, and take it to the back of the building, and at that point the filtration takes place. There's also standalone filtration devices that are available. I took a look online for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just to get a little bit better understanding. Filtration's not a problem in our world, in today's world. It's really easy to get filtration out of clean rooms, firing ranges, residentials. We can deal with mold. We can pretty much handle anything. It just really comes down to the template of what's put in place that they have to follow. So at that point, the protection can be achieved. So does that answer the questions?
I'm curious, with lead itself as a heavy metal, it stays airborne, but not for a long time. Will the filters that we're talking about completely remove it from the air prior to it leaving the building, the gun range environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. They have systems that are designed specifically for gun ranges, and whether or not the cost on that is exceeding. But when you get into what the EPA and the NRA is requiring, I mean, I think Tulsa has 3 gun ranges. Kansas City, they have multiple gun ranges. So when you get into that, I haven't looked at the particulate level, but we can get down to viruses and bacteria and take that level out of the air. So it can be filtered. And then it just comes down to whether or not it's maintained. The biggest problem in this situation is proper maintenance. That's really start failing on filtration. Is if it isn't maintained properly, then those systems fail.
All right. Are maintenance levels called out then in the system installation documentation?
I think that would go
on. Are they
on.
called out by the NRA, let's say, for standard gun range operation?
As far as the manufacturer is concerned, I'm not sure. Usually there's stipulations when you put that equipment in on when you're supposed to do that. But I'm sure the EPA has a handle on that as far as NRA, as far as what the maintenance level is and how many times you have to do that a year. So it's just picking the template and making sure that template's there and it can be handled. So.
I'm good. Thank you.
Any other questions with?
Louis, do you have any questions concerning the filtration?
No, that was it. I know other places are successful, and I just wanted to know if he had reached out to those to see what type of systems they had to put in to be compliant with the federal, state, and local regulations of where these gun ranges were being set up in.
I have not reached out to the ranges, per se, to ask those questions. I'm kind of relying on the experts that we hire to make sure we're in compliance.
Okay.
I do have a question of Jerry. I see Jerry. Chief Harrison, would you answer this? Is there anything, have you familiarized yourself with the motion that's before us this evening? Do you know what those stipulations or conditions are that we're listing there?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have it memorized.
Do you see it? Is there a necessary adjustment that needs to be made to these in order to safely handle particulate lead in the environment of the gun range?
The only thing that's in the stipulations there that I'd really comment on is that covers pretty much everything in there, and that is that the gun range is required to allow the police department to come in and inspect it every year and ensure that they're complying with these requirements. And I think that would everything's going to fall under that I would be concerned with. And I was given the information that was provided to the board, and I went back and researched that specific information that was provided to the board. And when I went through that, I went back and attempted to look at the source documents that applied. One thing that's important to consider is the source of the information you're receiving, as you gentlemen know. And the source of that information, as I read it, the main article was actually a compilation of several studies over a long period of time. I think some of those studies even dated back to the 70s and 80s and 90s. So many of those studies did not involve firearms. They involved occupational lead measures. So any occupation, plumbing, heating and cooling, anybody painting, anybody that could ever have been exposed to people that work in tire shops. So, I mean, run the gamut. The other thing to consider is very few of those articles applied to an indoor gun range. And of those, very few were recent. And as you know, technology changes tremendously in a very short period of time. So my conclusion after looking through the information that was provided was that it was inadequate for anyone to draw any conclusion from. And the information that was provided itself specifically stated that there is inadequate research to say whether or not these ventilation systems are a problem. And so, based off of the research that was provided itself, no, I don't have any concerns.
Thank you.
And then the design is going to have to go through the standard plan submittal, plan review, code review, and all that anyway. So, this is just kind of the first step in the process, and it all depends on your designers.
And that's the next step for us. We'll hire a design team that comes in, gives an on-site survey, makes recommendations on how we should lay it out, and we'll have an engineer drawing, and we'll go forward from there.
I remember from your last time that you said not only will it be a range, but you had classroom.
We'd like to have a retail
Retails,
outlet. We'd also
retail.
like to have a classroom for hunter safety courses. The 4-H kids, Wayne Blaze's guys, his girls will come in and practice and have meetings. We'd also have gun club meetings there, possibly some concealed carry classes. They're still wanted and needed, even though we're open carry. So we like a classroom, a retail outlet, and a range.
So it's much broader than just
Definitely.
range.
Definitely.
Okay. Any more discussion or
I'm good.
good,
I'm
Liz?
good.
Okay, at this time, then I'll call for a motion. Do I have a motion?
I move to accept the recommendations from the Planning Commission and adopt a resolution approving a conditional use permit for an indoor firing range in the C3 Central Business District at 212 North Pennsylvania Avenue with conditions.
Second.
Yeah, have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consider amending the qualifications for But yeah. Consider
Thank you all
amending
for
the
coming this
qualification for electrician licensure.
Mayor, the electrical board, since I took over as building inspector, has monthly been working on changing a few things, ordinances, and getting things updated. One of the things they wanted to do was require 6 hours of CEU hours per year for each licensed journeyman or master in the City of Independence. We sent the information to City Attorney Jeff Chubb, and he did a lot of research, and the recommendations we had sent to him were wrong. He followed the Kansas statutes and has based our ordinance off the Kansas statutes, brought it back to the electrical board, and they were very pleased with it. And that's the ordinance you have in front of you. And as we just said before, technology is changing so quick. The electricians feel it is imperative that our local electricians that are working be properly licensed and are staying up on the education of what's going on. And just a side note, the plumbing board just approved Monday a similar ordinance that I'll be bringing on the 6th of February for them, just trying to keep our local people, their skills up and their knowledge base level up. And so unless you have any questions.
That was kind of my question, if the plumbing board was going to follow suit or if they
Yes.
figured it all flows downhill, so
Yeah.
how can you improve that?
Yeah. They tell me it's pretty technical.
Yeah.
So, but with the new Flex, not Flex, but PEX
Yeah.
out. I mean, their technology is changing every day too, and some of it is they have an industry and a job that they want to maintain that livelihood in the community. They're constantly talking to me about people doing illegal work and stuff like that, and making sure as the building department that we're enforcing the codes and making sure people follow the codes in the City of Independence. But most of it is technology is changing so quick, and if people aren't staying up on it, it puts our citizens at risk when electrical work is being done.
Well, you know, you look at 6 hours training, 6 hours of code review would be critical. The codes change every 3 years.
Yes.
And, you know, that is probably more alarming than,
Yes.
you know, along with the technology, but just staying current that they're following the codes.
Yeah.
So-
And we did as a city, the board, it won't be any cost to the city other than we'll provide a room, would like to sponsor education event here that the electricians can sign up for, and so that those CE hours would be available for people locally. But they also told me, as with everything else, it's all online. A lot of people prefer to just do the online self-study. But we will do our part to ensure that the local electricians all have the opportunity, and this would be effective when they get their 2021 license. They'll
Is
have
there-
to provide the CEU proof.
Is there going to be a charge for this, or is this just going to be a service to electricians?
They would pay for the CEU classes to come in if they wanted to attend that class. The electric board, the electricians would do that. I only offered up we'd provide a room, a facility for them to hold that. We would not sponsor that event because it's about $240 for 6 hours of CEU is what it costs typically.
So they're actually going to bring in.
Yes. There's, I do not remember the name, but there's a gentleman that works in the area that teaches these classes and provides the CEU hours.
Any questions?
Actually, local access to CEU hours was my question, so local or online.
Yes.
So it's not a availability issue for those people that are in Independence.
Yeah. And they thought that was important, Commissioner, that if we're going to do this, we provide an avenue for hours.
It is. Do you have any questions, Lewis?
No, I'm good. I think that's a good move to stay on top of the changes that are coming down the pike. Yeah.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then I'll call for a motion.
I move that the city approve the amendment to the licensure of electricians starting in 2021.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is consider updating the sewer cost share program tabled from the January 9, 2020 meeting. Terrence?
I will be filling in for Terry unless you have specific questions for Terry.
Oh, no, that was whose name was on here.
I won't go over the cost share program in great detail since you guys have already seen it once before. But I will highlight the few changes that I made since the last time. First, clarification in section 3.1. The way it read before, it made it sound like each property owner was only allowed the maximum amount based on property owner, and the intent was per property. So I just added in up to $4,000 per property in a 12-month period and up to $2,000 per property in a 12-month period, clarifying per property. And then the application, although it's not an official part of the resolution, I did want to include it for your reference, and I simplified the application because we really, we don't need near as much information if you're not trying to qualify as low income. So I kind of made it a 2-page where we're really honing in on getting that information on if you may qualify for low income. First, trying to qualify them in a simpler method by participating in one of the other, state or some agency recognized low-income aid. And if you don't qualify by one of those resources, then you may fill out the long form, I'd call it, on the back. But otherwise, we don't need all of that specific personal information if you're not trying to qualify as low income.
Okay.
Otherwise, the program resolution has remained the same.
I really like the changes that you made since our last meeting. They really answered all of my questions.
Louis, do you have any more
Yeah.
questions?
No, that was great, because that's where some of the questions that were brought up, and it seemed like there was a lot of information asked, and I'm glad that Lacey's going through and revising some of these documents and making them a much more simpler process to go through.
Yeah, the only thing that it's not within the body of the report. It's the program has $20,000 per year for private source and INI, and $35,000 per year for INI study.
Right.
If it's the program, I would like to see that we set it just with a program cost, and the INI studies come from the general, or
So-
if it's a large item, because we need to. When you look at the cost for line replacement at $4,000, that's with $20,000, that's only $5,000.
So my plan was to include the full $55,000 budgeted number for this program. That is what the plan is.
Okay, and we'll strike the INI testing.
Yeah, I'm just gonna move it up into that other line item. Yep.
Okay. Well, that was the only thing, because, when you look at the age of the system and the age of the lines and some of the things we've been discussing, and you start looking at the private lines with problems, it is pretty significant, and getting those individual service lines from the building to the main replaced, it is. And I guess if we had everything fixed from the last study, then let's do more studies. But until we get everything fixed from the last study, let's just not, that's one thing. Daryl Unruh, he said, we don't need to do another study to put a book on the shelf and never come back to it. And I think that's so true, that the more money we can put into fixing the identified areas of the study, the better we'll be. So, no, I'm good. So, are you going to have $55,000 then budgeted?
55,000 is what is budgeted in 2020. Yes.
Okay.
And I had David Schwenker do some research for me that I thought you guys would find interesting. He looked back since 2001, and these numbers may be off a little bit. They're from what we could find. The city has funded over $290,000 in the previous sewer cost share program. So it has been utilized over the last 18 years. We were able to identify of that about $154,000 was put towards low-income qualified individuals. So it's used, and it's a good program, I think.
Good. Good.
Yeah, that is good.
Appreciate you looking into. I think that was a question that you had.
Indeed, I was hoping that the utilization was very high, and I was hoping that we could combine the amounts so that we could even improve that participation rate. So I'm glad to hear both those things.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, years ago we had to replace a sewer line to one of the houses. I think we're looking at $1,500 to $2,000. So it is a significant, and it's only gone up. I didn't know about the program then, but this is good. And particularly, the initial was just in Basin 10 and 11. Expanding it to system-wide is really going to be beneficial. So that was, I think, initiated earlier. But okay, if there's no further questions,
Mayor, I just wanted to bring to your attention, are you comfortable with leaving that regardless of whether they're low income or not, they can still request to exceed the amounts, which is what is in the proposal?
Yeah, we talked briefly about that last time, about whether we would be handling requests on a case-by-case basis if the applicant, if the homeowner felt like it was, and somehow, if the cost was in some way excessive. Or,
Right. So I just wanted to point that out and make sure that you're comfortable with that. Because there could be somebody that just barely doesn't meet that low-income threshold.
right? Yeah.
The
That's
other
what-
program was just low-income could exceed, so that is different from the old program.
I guess there's
I'm
two low incomes. That there's one that you've got a value that sets the limit there, and then there could be low income because of work situations, size of family that could be different. And
This one is
yes.
more broad and is trying to be more inclusive and easier to qualify as low income. But I didn't want to, if for whatever reason you don't meet that and you want to come to the commission to request
Right.
a different amount, I didn't want to exclude anyone from doing that.
Right. Yeah, I'm
I'm
good
okay
with
with
it.
that.
Thank you.
Good.
So with that, I'll call for a motion.
I move to approve the updated zero cost share program resolution as presented.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. The next item is reports. Item A, report 223 West Main Street update.
Mayor, I have nothing to report at this time. No updates.
I think at the last meeting you said you were going to send a letter. The letter's been sent and
Yes.
no response.
There has been no response.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Item B were city board minutes, library board, economic development, electrical board, and planning commission, board of zoning appeals. Any questions or comments concerning board minutes?
I have none.
If
I
not,
have none.
city manager comments?
I don't have anything.
You do you want to share an update on Peter Pan Road?
Yeah, the estimated completion date is the end of March. There's a possibility they might get that done a few weeks prior to that, but they want to stick to that date just in case, they have weather issues or something. So it's moving right along.
I think they've been pouring concrete curb and gutter. What was it?
Yeah, I got.
1st of February start?
Yeah, I got an
actually
update
pull-
today that I sent out to the commission that had some details on that.
We've really been fortunate on that with the weather this winter that it's allowed them to continue working. Okay. Commissioners' comments. Dean, do you have any?
I just am getting up to speed, so this is an item from the minutes for the November 14th commission meeting where we stated that we would like to develop or address at a work session maybe to develop a policy that incentivizes nonprofits who want to renovate or build a house for families in need. Did that work session take place, or has that fallen to a future work session?
What minutes was that from,
It was
Commissioner?
from November the 14th, and it was from Commissioner comments section of those
For
minutes.
nonprofits to build a residential structure?
I think it was relating to the building permit fee that we had a request from
The used to be Habitat for Humanity,
right,
but then they
that
changed
they
their
asked us to
name,
waive the
which you did.
building permit fee. We did, but then there's other not-for-profit
Like Community
Oh.
Mission.
that's paying building permit fees, and that was to be discussed. Why don't we, there were a couple other things that we had postponed till after the first of the year.
Okay.
Why don't we make a list of those, and let's set a work session to deal with some of those carryovers that we can get caught up on,
That sounds good.
okay?
Okay.
Seemed like there were a couple others.
Your next work
Two.
session will be the phase 2 of the water plant,
Right.
February. So.
I just feel like that particular one was of interest, and I wanted to make sure that it didn't
Definitely.
get delayed too much.
We got to have consistency if we're going to waive for one nonprofit building permit, because some of them are $600.
Yeah, it depends on the value of the project.
So, okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
Louis, did you have any comments?
No, I don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
Okay. And I don't either. So at this time, public concerns, Dave, did you? We had no public concerns. So next item is executive session. So I move that we recess for an executive session for review and discussion of city manager applications pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception, KSA 75-4319B1. It'll be attended by the commissioners with Commissioner Ususi on phone. What phone
I've
number?
got another one of these phones over there, and I'll get him on the phone for you.
Okay. Let's call it for 20 minutes and we can reschedule. So, but let's give us to say, begin our 20 minutes at 7:30. Take a little 5-minute break.
Louis,
So I've made the motion. Do I have
I
a
second it.
second? Got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Louis, if you'll hang up, I'll call you on the other phone, okay?
Okay, Louis, we are
Yes.
back in session. We have no action to take after executive session. So with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. We're adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Get
have
better.
a good evening.
Get better, Louis.
All right, thanks.